I still remember the exact second I walked into that room, the sound first, a soft buzzing from a phone camera, then my wife's voice, shaking, broken, trying not to cry, and then I saw her, sitting on a chair, hands frozen in her lap, her hair falling to the floor in uneven pieces. That my daughter-in-law didn't even look at me, she just said, without stopping the recording, "Wait, don't move. This angle is perfect." I said, "What are you doing to her?" She finally looked up, irritated, like I was interrupting something normal. "It's just content. Relax." My wife didn't speak. She couldn't even look at me properly. That silence told me everything, and in that moment, I realized something was very wrong in my house. That I am not a rich man. I never was. Most of my life was spent working in a warehouse supply job, managing inventory, lifting boxes, dealing with deliveries, coming home tired every night. It wasn't a big life, but it was honest. That I never thought of myself as powerful, just responsible. That my wife was the opposite of everything loud in this world. She was calm, patient, the kind of woman who never complained even when things were hard. If I came home stressed, she would not ask questions. She would just make tea and sit quietly beside me. That was our life, simple, stable, quiet. That we had one son. And like most parents, we built our entire world around him without even realizing it. Education, support, sacrifice. That we never called it sacrifice at the time. It just felt like duty. When he got married, we thought life would settle even more. That we would finally enter a peaceful phase, but that's not how it turned out, because his wife was different from the beginning. She lived on her phone, always recording, always watching her screen, always talking about views, followers, and content ideas. At first, I ignored it. That I thought it was just modern habits, a new generation thing, but I didn't realize something important at that time. Not everything modern is harmless. It started with small things. It first, I didn't even consider them serious enough to react to. She would record cooking without asking. Sometimes she would film my wife organizing the kitchen or cleaning the backyard. My wife didn't like it, but she stayed quiet at first. One day, my wife finally said something. She stood near the kitchen counter and said gently, "Please don't record me without asking first. I don't feel comfortable." There was no anger in her voice, only politeness. My daughter-in-law didn't respond immediately. She just looked at her phone for a second longer than necessary, then she said, "It's not a big deal. Everyone posts stuff like this." My wife replied softly, "But I don't want to be online." That was the first real silence between them, not peaceful silence. Heavy silence. From that day, something changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, but noticeably. The warmth in the house started to reduce. Everything started having a camera angle. Breakfast, lunch, family time, everything had a possible post. I remember once asking her directly, "Do you really need to record everything in this house?" She smiled without looking up. "This is how people grow now, Dad. You wouldn't understand." That sentence stayed with me, not because it was rude, but because it created a line between two worlds, her world and ours. Then things slowly crossed another line. She started planning moments, not just recording them. One evening, I saw her asking my wife to sit near the window. She adjusted her position like a director, moved a chair slightly, then said, "Mom, just sit here for a minute. I'm trying something." My wife hesitated. "Why are you recording again?" "Transformation," I said quietly. "Ask your mother." The air in the room changed instantly. He went to the bedroom. I didn't follow. I already knew what he would see. A few minutes later, he came back. His face was different, not angry, not loud, just disturbed. He looked at his wife. "Why would you do that without asking her?" She exhaled. "I didn't force her. She was just emotional." "You guys are making this a bigger deal than it is." My son looked at me, searching for answers. I didn't speak, because I needed him to see it himself. That night, nobody really ate. Food sat on the table untouched. My wife didn't come out of the room. My son sat in silence, and my daughter-in-law stayed on her phone the entire time. At one point, I heard her laugh softly. "They're loving the video," she said. "It's getting a lot of comments." That's when I realized something deeper. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was a different way of thinking. Later that night, I checked on my wife again. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, not crying anymore. That was worse, because when someone stops crying, it means they've gone beyond it. I asked her softly, "Do you want anything?" She shook her head, then after a long pause she said, "I just want to feel normal again." I didn't know what to say, because I wasn't even sure what normal meant in our house anymore. Outside the room, I could hear constant phone notifications. Each sound felt like a reminder that something had already been taken from us, and was now being turned into entertainment somewhere else. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because I was angry, because something in my mind had become very clear: this wasn't going to fix itself. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was still angry, but because something inside me had shifted into clarity. I kept replaying the same scenes over and over, not just what happened in that room, but everything before it, the small recordings, the ignored boundaries, the way content slowly replaced respect in my own home, and I realized something I didn't want to accept. This wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. The next morning, I didn't start an argument. I didn't bring up the video. I didn't even raise my voice. I just watched, quietly, carefully, and what I saw confirmed everything. She was already on her phone, scrolling comments, checking engagement, smiling slightly at the numbers. As if nothing had happened the day before. I finally asked her one question: "Do you think what happened yesterday was okay?" She didn't even look up. "It wasn't that serious, Dad. People online are too sensitive." That answer told me everything I needed to know. In her mind, there was no guilt to process, only reaction to manage. From that moment, I stopped reacting emotionally inside the house, not because I accepted it, but because I realized emotion wasn't changing anything anymore. I needed a different approach. So I started paying attention instead of reacting. I watched patterns. When she recorded what she recorded, how quickly it went online, how she reframed situations into content angles. It wasn't random. It was structured behavior, almost automatic, like everything was being filtered through one thought: what will get attention? Not what will hurt someone. That realization changed how I moved. I stopped arguing. I stopped interrupting, and I started documenting things quietly, not emotionally, not dramatically, just facts: what happened, what was said, how my wife reacted, how she responded. No opinions, just a timeline of reality. At first, even I didn't fully understand why I was doing it, but slowly, it gave me something I had lost: control over clarity. One evening, I reached out to an old contact from my warehouse days. He now worked in digital media consulting. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to ask a simple question: why do people push content even when it starts hurting their own family? There was a pause, then he said something I didn't forget: because attention rewards faster than relationships can punish. I sat there for a moment after the call ended, not shocked, just understanding. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen long after everyone had gone to bed. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about confrontation. I was thinking about structure, about how behavior changes when consequences are delayed, and I realized something important: if nothing changed, this would only escalate, not stop. So I made a decision, not emotional, not reactive, clear. I would stop trying to fix this through arguments inside the house, and start observing it like a system outside of emotion, because systems don't respond to feelings, they respond to pressure, clarity, and consequences. The next morning, I began something new. I started paying attention to everything without interrupting it, not to expose, not to attack, but to understand fully what was happening, because for the first time, I stopped seeing this as a family argument, and started seeing it as something that had taken its own direction. And once you see that clearly, you stop reacting the same way. After that decision, I changed the way I existed inside my own house, not loudly, not dramatically. I stopped reacting. That was the first shift, because I noticed something important quickly. When I didn't react, she started adjusting. At first, she didn't notice it, then she noticed it a little, then she started watching me more closely than before. The next morning, she set up her phone again in the living room. Tripod ready, camera facing the kitchen, she said casually, "Today I'm doing a real-life family routine vlog. People love authenticity." My son looked at her. "What exactly are you filming?" She smiled, "Just daily life. Nothing serious." That word again, nothing serious, the same phrase used every time something emotional was being turned into content. That I didn't stop her. I didn't argue. I just watched, and I started noticing something new. She wasn't just recording moments anymore, she was waiting for them, like life itself had become a setup for the next clip. That evening, I saw my wife hesitate before entering the kitchen. She looked around first. Not because she was doing anything wrong, but because she didn't know if she was being filmed. That moment hit me harder than the original incident, because it meant something had changed permanently inside her. Home was no longer just home. It had become awareness. I spoke to my son privately later. I said, "This can't keep happening like this." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly. "I know. I've been thinking the same thing." That was the first time we were fully on the same page. That night, something shifted again. My daughter-in-law posted another video. This time it wasn't the incident. It was clips from earlier days, family moments, laughter, cooking, framed as real family life in America. Red heart. But this time, the reaction was different. I saw comments appearing. First normal, then questions. Why does the mom look uncomfortable sometimes? Was this recorded with consent? This feels staged or forced. I didn't say anything. I just watched, because I could see something she couldn't yet. The audience was starting to notice context, not just content. Later that night, she came into the kitchen frustrated. "They don't understand storytelling," she said. "They're twisting everything." My son replied calmly, "Or maybe they're seeing what we've been ignoring." Silence followed, not angry silence, awareness silence, that kind that changes the temperature of a room. For the first time, she didn't respond immediately, she just looked at her phone. No smile. No confidence, just processing. And I realized something in that moment. The system she depended on was no longer fully in her control, because once perception shifts, content alone is no longer enough. It happened a few days later, but the tension had already been building quietly. Nobody was yelling in the house. That was the strange part. It wasn't loud anymore. It was controlled silence, and somehow, that made everything heavier. My daughter-in-law was sitting at the dining table reviewing comments again. Her phone kept lighting up. She kept scrolling faster each time, like she was trying to find something that would make her feel in control again. Then she said, "They don't understand what I'm trying to build here." My son looked at her. "Or they do, and you don't like what they're seeing." That sentence changed her expression immediately, not anger, something more fragile, uncertainty. She placed the phone down harder than usual. "I think I should explain it in a new video," she said. "Clear everything up." That's when I finally spoke, calmly. "No." She looked at me. "What do you mean no?" I stood up slowly. "I mean we're not doing this through edits anymore." The room went still, even my son stopped moving. I walked to the table and sat down, and for the first time, I didn't speak like someone trying to avoid conflict. I spoke like someone ending confusion. "We're going to look at everything as it actually happened. Not clips. Not angles. Not captions." She gave a short laugh. "That sounds dramatic, Dad." I shook my head. "It's just complete." That word again, complete, not edited, not selective, complete reality. My wife came out of the bedroom slowly. She had been listening. She didn't sit down, she just stood there for a moment. Then I asked her something I hadn't asked directly before. "Can you tell us what happened that day, in your own words?" The room went quiet instantly, even the air felt heavier. She hesitated, then she spoke. I said no. Simple. No explanation. No emotion added, just truth. Then she continued. I told her I didn't want to be recorded like that. I felt uncomfortable. I didn't agree. My daughter-in-law immediately interrupted. That's not true. You didn't stop me. You were fine before. My wife looked at her directly for the first time in days. I didn't want to cause conflict in my own home. That sentence landed harder than anything else. Nobody spoke after that, because now it wasn't about interpretation anymore. It was about pressure, and fear. I reached into the drawer and placed my notebook on the table, not dramatically, just placing it there. I started writing things down after that day. I said. She frowned. What is that supposed to prove? I answered calmly, it doesn't prove anything. It records what happened. My son finally spoke again. His voice was low. Why would you record her if she wasn't comfortable? That question stayed in the air. Long unanswered, because there wasn't a clean answer, only justification that didn't sound strong anymore in the open. She tried again. It was content. People do this every day. Nobody gets hurt. But her voice wasn't steady anymore. It was thinner, less certain, because now it wasn't her camera controlling the narrative. It was the room. I looked at her and said, "You don't get to decide what didn't hurt someone else." Silence. No response. No counterargument, just quiet, and for the first time, she wasn't talking like a creator, she was just someone in a room, being questioned without an audience. That's when the shift became irreversible. After that night, nothing in the house snapped back to normal. There was no apology that fixed everything. No single conversation that erased what happened. Instead, there was something quieter, adjustment, and responsibility, slowly replacing denial. The next morning felt different in a way nobody talked about. My daughter-in-law didn't set up her camera. No tripod in the living room. No talking to the phone. No rehearsing lines. She still had her phone in her hand, but she wasn't performing anymore. Just scrolling, less confident, more careful. My son was the first to enforce a boundary, not angrily, not emotionally, just clearly. This house is not a place for recording people without consent. He paused, then added, "If something is shared from here, everyone has to agree to it first." No debate followed. No interruption, just silence, and acceptance, even if unwilling at first. Days passed like that, not fixed, but contained. The camera didn't disappear from her life, but it disappeared from the house in the way it used to be used. No more surprise moments. No more unspoken filming. Everything became deliberate, and that changed the atmosphere more than anything else. My wife started coming out of the bedroom more. First just for meals, then for small conversations, then for sitting in the living room without scanning the room like she was being watched. One evening, I saw her sitting by the window just holding a cup of tea. No tension in her shoulders. Not fully healed, but no longer trapped in that same mental loop. I asked her quietly one night, "Are you okay now?" She didn't answer immediately, then she said, "I don't want to feel like I have to think before I exist in my own house." That stayed with me, because that was the real damage, not the haircut, not the video, but the feeling of being observed instead of being safe. My daughter-in-law eventually tried to speak to her, not for content, not for camera, just as a person. "I didn't realize how it felt from your side," she said. My wife looked at her for a long time, then replied, "You don't have to understand everything perfectly. You just have to respect it." No argument followed, because there was nothing left to debate, only boundaries left to accept. Something else changed too. The online presence became quieter, less personal content, less family exposure, more separation between public and private life, not because someone forced it, but because reality inside the house had become too real to ignore. One evening, my son sat beside me on the porch. He looked tired in a different way, not physical, mental. "I never thought something like this would happen in our home," he said. I replied, "It didn't happen in one moment. It built slowly." He nodded, and didn't say anything after that, because he understood it now. My wife's confidence returned in small pieces, not suddenly, slowly. She started laughing again at small things, she started speaking without hesitation, she stopped flinching at phone screens being near her, not because everything was forgotten, but because it no longer controlled her daily thoughts, and I realized something important in the end. This was never just about social media. It was about boundaries that were never clearly defined until they were crossed, about how easily attention can replace awareness, and how quickly a home can stop feeling like a home when everything inside it becomes content. The house didn't become perfect again, but it became conscious, and that was the difference, because once people truly understand what was lost, they don't repeat it the same way again. Weeks passed, then months, and slowly, the house stopped feeling like it was frozen in that one moment, but it never went back to what it was before either. That part was gone permanently. There were no more surprises. No more sudden cameras turning on in the middle of normal life. No more content moments disguised as family time. Everything became simple again, almost quiet in a different way. My daughter-in-law still used social media, but something had changed in how she used it. The obsession with capturing everything slowed down, like she finally understood that not every moment is meant to be recorded. Some moments are meant to be lived. My son told her one evening, "You can still create, but not at the cost of someone's comfort." She didn't argue, she just nodded, and that was new, because before, she always had a defense. Now she had reflection. My wife changed the most, not loudly, not in any dramatic way, but in small signs only I noticed at first. She started sitting longer at the table. She started initiating conversations again. She stopped asking for permission to exist in her own space. That was the real recovery, not forgetting. But feeling safe again. One night, I asked her something I hadn't asked in a long time. Do you regret anything? She thought for a moment, then said, I regret staying silent when I should have spoken earlier. That was no anger, no blame, just honesty. And I understood something then. This was never about one person being right or wrong. That it was about what happens when boundaries are delayed for too long, when discomfort is normalized, when silence is mistaken for acceptance. The house is not perfect now. It never fully will be again, but it is stable, and more importantly, it is aware. Because once you see what happens when everything becomes content, you stop letting life be edited in real time, and you start protecting what actually matters, even if it comes too late.